Hey there, HorseCenter fans. Matt and I are back with another exciting edition of the show. Matt, we're talking about the Ogden Phipps. We're remembering Arrogate, and we're looking back at some really big performances last week.
That's for sure. There were some speedy horses that won some big races. Can't wait to talk about them.
All right, watch it all right now here on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the outstanding pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I am good, Brian. It's been really hot up here in New Jersey, summer-like weather, but excited about doing the show with you, my friend.
Same here. Long summer days ahead, Matt. We're getting close to the longest day of the year here in Kentucky. I don't know about you out in New Jersey. I think it works for you as well. Hey, Matt, we're going to jump around a little bit on today's show, but we do have one Grade 1 race coming this weekend, and I want to talk about it, Matt. It's the Ogden Phipps. And champions, Matt, have won the last three editions of the Ogden Phipps. That's Songbird, Abel Tasman, and, of course, Midnight Bassoux. Matt, I'm not sure if a champion will come out of this group, but what we do have is a pretty handy and accomplished field of six.
Yeah, we certainly do. I know, we don't have the big headliners in the race in Midnight Bassoux and Mana My Girl, but it's a really solid field. All six of the horses are past graded stakes winners. There's a couple of Grade 1 winners in there. There's a millionaire in the race. And it's one of those interesting races where there's a good mix of horses that have some speed and talented horses that like to run late.
Yeah, you can say that again, Matt, because as I'm handicapping this race, I see four horses who want to be either on or near the early lead, and then two horses who really like to come from pretty far back. So this 1.16 mile, one turn at Belmont Park on Saturday should be an interesting race. And it's not often you can say that every horse in the field, I realize it's only a half dozen older mares in here, Matt, but you can often say that every horse in the field is a graded stakes winner, and that's what we have in Saturday's Grade 1 Ogden Phipps. I want to start with the West Coast Invader, Matt, because Ollie's Candy, I think, quietly has gotten to the point where she is one of the better older females in the country. You know, yeah, you mentioned Mana My Girl and Midnight Bassoux, and maybe there's a couple of Chaz Brown recent returners who might be a little bit above her, maybe Serengeti Empress, but Ollie's Candy has gotten awfully good, and she came within a whisker last time of winning her second Grade 1 race in her last 5 starts.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Brian, Ollie's Candy is one of the Grade 1 winners in this race. She won the Clement Hirsch last time. John Sadler sent her out to Oaklawn Park because she doesn't do her best running at Santa Anita, according to him. It was a race, again, that was loaded with speed, 2 turns. She knocked heads out on the front all the way around the track and had the lead, but gave it up right at the wire to a very, very talented horse this year in CC.
Yes, CC got her, and it was so close. It was unclear if CC had gotten her in that Apple Blossom. So it was a very big performance by Ollie's Candy. You mentioned the Clement Hirsch last year, where she became a Grade 1 winner, and she ran some good races after that to close out last year. Remember, she was 4th in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Interesting in that, yeah, Santa Anita might not be her favorite surface. So this filly, who's really based in California, has left California first to run at Oaklawn Park, and like we said, she ran a big race in the Apple Blossom, and now a shot at Belmont Park. She is one of the horses, as you talked about her performance in the Apple Blossom. She is one of the horses who wants to be on or near the lead. But maybe not so much as one or two others in here where I feel like, oh, if she doesn't get the lead, she's going to be in trouble, because I think that might be a tough scenario if that were the case on Saturday, Matt. I think she can sit just off horses. Having said that, maybe her best 2 races are the Clement Hirsch and the Apple Blossom, and both of those she was on the lead. So it'll be interesting to see what they can work out here. But I think, for my money, Ollie's Candy is the horse to beat. She might be favored. I expect a lot of money to come pouring in on Point of Honor, though, Matt. You remember Point of Honor ran second in a couple of Grade 1 races last summer at Saratoga. And if you just look at the ground she made up in the Apple Blossom, went third behind CC and Ollie's Candy. I think that's going to have a lot of handicappers saying, all right, Point of Honor beats her this time.
Yeah, that is certainly a plus to look at. She broke badly in the Apple Blossom, got squeezed back, and not too quickly into the race. She was 23 lengths behind. I think some of that was due to the fact that they were going pretty fast on the front end. Things got set up well for her, and she came running. So that third place looked really good. You mentioned last year that she was second in the big New York races, the Coaching Club of American Oaks and the Alabama. And last year she also won the Black Eyed Susan.
Yeah, Point of Honor, a daughter of Curlin, trained by George Weaver, is a horse I've always liked. And, I thought she ran a good race in the Apple Blossom. But looking at her and looking at some of her best performances, Matt, the one thing I worry about, maybe just a little bit when I'm separating the top two, because I think the top two are pretty close in my eyes, is that Point of Honor looks to me to be a horse that might want a little bit more distance than the mile 16th. I almost want her at 1.25 miles or at least 1.125 miles. But you said it, the race might set up for her with the speed, so that can often cancel out the need for more distance. But certainly a strong contender. I expect those two to vie for favoritism in here, and they're certainly coming off a good performance there in the Apple Blossom. Another one I think we need to talk about, Matt, is Pink Sands, because Pink Sands wasn't a big thing early in her career for trainer Shug McGahee, but she's gotten better and better. Last year, you could see signs of her getting good, maybe not Grade 1 good, but getting good. And then what she did this winter at Gulfstream Park was quite impressive.
Yeah, it certainly was. 2 big graded stakes wins at Gulfstream in the winter, and certainly put her in the best form of her career. At that point, Shug decided with this daughter of Tappet that he would give her a little bit of rest to prepare her for some of the big filly races at Keeneland. As things turned out, that wasn't going to happen. The Keeneland meet was canceled. So, folks, if you're looking at the PPs of Pink Sands and you're wondering and you're concerned about the fact that it's been a long time since she ran, it wasn't because of any physical problems to worry about. It was because of what happened around the country with tracks closing. When Keeneland shut down, there wasn't any real alternatives left for her, so Shug pointed her towards the Ogden Phipps. Another one of the other late closer in here, Brian. So that's going to help her in the Phipps.
Yeah, and it's an interesting difference between the two closers in here, because like I said about Point of Honor, I think Point of Honor wants to run a distance, and 1 mile 16th might be on the very short end of the spectrum for her. Pink Sands, on the other hand, boy, that last race, her most recent race, which is getting on almost 5 months now, as you said, I'm sure was her best race of her career, and she just closed down the stretch in that 7 furlong inside information at Gulfstream Park like a freight train. She got a fast pace at an elongated sprint at 7 furlongs. So mile 16th with a good pace might, at one turn, mile 16th might still well be within her top spectrum of what she can do. I do have concern a little bit with, is she really a Grade 1 horse? Is she used to running against horses like Ollie's Candy and Point of Honor? That's not been proven yet. But if you look at that inside information, you certainly have to give her a shot, especially with some pace in front of her. I also worry just a little bit about the fact that it seems like Gulfstream Park is her favorite track. Those last 2 big wins came at Gulfstream Park, and now she's coming to Belmont Park. So a very interesting closer, more of a 1-turn closer, while Point of Honor is a 2-turn closer. And Matt, I expect those to be the 3 favorites in the Ogden Phipps, all with a chance to win. And then you got 3 horses who really have some nice things on their resume, but there are reasons why they're going to be the 4th, 5th, and 6th choice in here. Let's start with She's a Julie. You mentioned that there's a millionaire in the field. It's a Julie.
Yeah, it sure is. She's a Julie, and She's a Julie is the other Grade 1 winner in here. Yeah, I know her form as of late doesn't look as good as it has at other times, but since she last won a race, she's been running pretty much exclusively in Grade 1 and Grade 2 company. So she's got some back class that could help her be around when they get to the end of the race. Another one of the four that we mentioned that prefers to be racing out front.
Yeah, although unlike Ollie's Candy and maybe unlike the two Belmont horses we're going to talk about, I think she does have the ability to sit just off the lead and stalk a little bit. I didn't love where she was going at the end of end of last year. On the other hand, she clearly wasn't as good as some horses like Blue Prize or late last year. But on the other hand, you're right. She kept the best of company, maybe even better company than she'll see on Saturday. Her one race this year probably is a draw line through it. It certainly looks ugly, but she really broke poorly and wasn't able to run her normal style. I wish she showed a little bit more, but she comes back pretty quickly from that poor performance, and that's probably a good sign, trained by Steve Asmussen. And I do like the fact that she can maybe sit in third or fourth in this race with plenty of speed and make a move. It's tough for me to pick her to win, though, but she's an interesting horse to play in the exotics because I think off those races where she wasn't real close to winning, she probably will have some decent odds in here. Moving to the next horse, Golden Award, the first of two for Belmont. There's a lot of good races in her form. I just couldn't talk myself into liking her, though.
Yeah, I felt the same way, Brian. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the discussion of this race, they're all graded stakes winners in here, and Golden Award is another one of those. So you look back and you see some really good races, but again, this is a horse that wants to be out there on the lead, and you're going to face quality like Ollie's Candy. I think it's just a tough spot for her.
Yeah, I guess I like her a little better than you, but I just don't love her in this spot. It's one turn with a bunch of speed. Maybe Belmont, because I think Belmont has the two most speedy horses in the race. Maybe there's a chance one of them scratches. I hope not. And with the limited amount of opportunities there's been lately, I have a feeling both will run. But yeah, Golden Award looks like a horse who wants the lead, and in this spot, it just doesn't seem to set up for her well. I will say I was very impressed with her win at Saratoga last year in the Shoe V. She beat some good horses, and like I said, she's a consistent filly, as is Blamed. Blamed, Matt, has won 9 of 14, I believe, lifetime, and she can certainly get the mile 16th distance with her speed. But it just looks like after almost a year off that ran into January of this year, she's come back, and if there's too much pressure, she folds it. If she doesn't have too much pressure, she looks good winning. But this field, this pace setup, I look at Blame as the outsider of the group, even with that resume of 9 of 14 victories.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, Brian, and it's worth noting that a bunch of those 9 wins came for Blamed at the beginning of her career when she was racing in the Southwest at Zia Park and Sunland Park. That was before she changed ownership and was transferred to the barn of Belmont.
That's true. Okay, well, bottom line here, and I almost feel bad for saying this, but I always am honest with my picks. I like the 2 favorites. I really do. Even though we said there's 6 out of 6 graded stakes winners in the field, I think it sets up pretty well for ralliers. But I think Ollie's Candy can sit just off the lead, and I think her recent form is just a little bit better. And maybe the deciding factor for me, the top pick over Point of Honor, was the distance, where I think she's a little better at a mile 16th than maybe Point of Honor is. But I see a straight exacta coming from the Apple Blossom with Ollie's Candy first, Point of Honor second.
I feel the same way. I think the Apple Blossom was a top quality race. It gives those 2 recency over a lot of the field. I feel like the wild card factor in the race is the one turn, and how various horses are going to fit into that will be interesting to see. But I agree. I think it's those 2, Point of Honor And Ollie's Candy. I'm going to go the other way. Maybe that's because I'm a sucker for a deep closer and getting the right setup. So Point of Honor is going to be my top pick over Ollie's Candy.
Well, there you go. Matt and I are on the chalk in reverse order in the Ogden Phipps. Sorry about that, folks, but like I said, we have to be honest with you. Hey, Matt, it's been a little while, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the death of Arrogate, because I do think Arrogate was one of the most important horses that have run in the last decade. Whether you're a huge fan of Arrogate or whether you're not, I think you have to respect what he did on the track. Of course, we lost Arrogate, or Judgmont Farm lost Arrogate to a still undetermined illness. He got sick, and he passed away last week. And it's a story that I think we should talk about a little bit. He won 7 of 11 on the racetrack, the Son of Unbridled Song for trainer Bob Baffert. But I think there's a lot more to the story than that 7 of 11 lifetime record.
Yeah, no doubt, Brian. And I would describe Arrogate as a shooting star, Brian, the kind that appears in the sky suddenly and flashes brilliantly and then fades away pretty quickly also. And to me, that's what Arrogate was. That 4-race Grade 1 winning streak that he put together from August of 2016 to March of 2017 is almost incomparable in terms of the amount of money that he put together and won, ending up with more than $17 million in earnings. It began with the Travers when he was a little bit of an unknown, maybe at 11-1, but that was the end of the big prices, because the Breeders' Cup Classic, the Pegasus World Cup, and then the Dubai World Cup came in such a short sequence.
Yeah, you say a short sequence, and it was, I guess, a period over 8 months, so it wasn't entirely too short. The Travers, Baffert had been talking about Arrogate all spring and early summer before the Travers, but still, that Travers was a loaded field. Exaggerator and Nyquist had been the early horses. Gunrunner was a nice horse, but there were a lot of up and coming horses in that race. It was just a big field with a lot of horses, and certainly Arrogate got a bunch of talk before the Travers. But what we saw in the Travers was, no one could have expected what we saw in the Travers. I mean, he won by more than a dozen lengths. Matt, he ran a sub 2-minute mile in that Travers, the only horse to do that at Saratoga. He's the fastest Travers. How many Travers have there been, Matt? He ran the fastest Travers in history. I guess the record before his Travers was General Assembly, when he won in the slop by gobs of, I think he won by 15 lengths. But that record had stood for nearly 4 decades. And then Arrogate comes along, and the Travers lightly raised Arrogate, and he threw down maybe his most memorable performance came in that first Grade 1 stakes win. But then the BC Classic, we were there a few months later, and people doubted Arrogate. I know a lot of people who thought that, the Travers was great, but can he do it against older horses? And California Chrome really was peaking as an older horse at that time, and California Chrome, Matt, looked every bit the winner at the 3/16th pole or even the 8th pole. And for the younger Arrogate to run him down like he did in the Breeders' Cup Classic was very impressive.
Yeah, it certainly was. And you said people doubted him. He went off at about 8-5 in there, which was a big difference from the Travers. But when you look at his next races coming up, I guess turned out to be a pretty good price.
Yeah, and a horse like California Chrome is not going to get run down the way he was running like that very often. So big performance. Pegasus World Cup, I guess, was a bit of a bummer in that it was a rematch. This came January, of course, end of January in Florida, and it was a rematch between him and California Chrome. And unfortunately, California Chrome did not have it that day. Did not bring his A game to Gulfstream Park. Arrogate did. Arrogate did. I think the adjusted time, the corrected time was 146 and change, making it a track record at the new Gulfstream at least. So another huge performance, another easy win for Arrogate. And the buyers he earned in these American races, Matt, 122 in the Travers, 119 in the Pegasus World Cup, 120 in the Breeders' Cup Classic. We haven't seen a string of buyers like that in American racing for years and years. So obvious why so many people loved him. And then if the Travers wasn't his most impressive race, the Dubai World Cup was, because he's a horse who always showed a fair amount of speed up until the Dubai World Cup. And then he just broke in a tangle and was squeezed back and was well back in last in a large field in the Dubai World Cup. I did not like his chances after the first 50 yards of the Dubai World Cup.
Yeah, certainly, maybe his most impressive race for different reasons than than in the Travers. In the Dubai World Cup, he, like you said, was an absolutely horrific break against a very good field, a very good international field, of course, in the Dubai World Cup, and somehow Mike Smith was able to get Arrogate through the traffic and get an impressive victory in that Dubai World Cup.
Yeah, it was a great victory, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Gunrunner, we know how good he got at the end of his 3-year-old year, and then we know how very, very good he got as a 4-year-old. And we didn't know what Gunrunner was going to go on to do at the time of the Dubai World Cup, but it only adds to how impressive, because Arrogate lost so much ground at the start, and he waited patiently, and then he just rolled right by. Gunrunner really didn't have too much of an answer, and Arrogate won that Dubai World Cup going away. An amazing performance. And then almost as amazing was how Arrogate failed. There was a gap in time from the Dubai World Cup until the San Diego handicap, but it was stunning to see how this horse, who was so dominant over those 8 months in those 4 huge races, came back. And I guess the common thread there, it was after a layoff and it was after a trip to Dubai, but the most common thread was they all came at Del Mar. But really stunning to see the fall of Arrogate after he saw the world look so good in those 4 races.
Yeah, he just was not the same horse in those final 3 races. Seemed to have some physical problems in his back end in those final races, and that kind of thing was not uncommon for sons of Unbridled Songs, that Mr. Prospector line. Those horses tended to be fragile, and Arrogate had Mr. Prospector on the male and female side a few generations back.
Yeah, a lot was made of the fact that all 3 of those races, the San Diego, where he did poorly in his return race, then the Pacific Classic, where he was making up ground to be second in that Pacific Classic, but then the Breeders' Cup Classic was again at Del Mar, and he was off the board as Gunrunner won easy. A lot was made that they all came at Del Mar. Maybe he just didn't like Del Mar, but maybe to a point, but he sure didn't seem like the same horse. I'm glad you mentioned Unbridled Song again, because Unbridled Song was a unique talent, and I think there was some physical attributes that were similar between Arrogate and his sire, Unbridled Song. Unbridled Song was a big, powerful gray who was really precocious, very good as a 2-year-old. Of course, he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile very early in his racing career, and was the favorite for the Kentucky Derby. Big talent, but clearly on the fragile side. And Unbridled Song, in his own way, quite different than Arrogate, but Unbridled Song in his own way was a bit of a shooting star, but a huge talent. And here comes his son Arrogate many years later, who shooting stars is a great way to say it. And now, unfortunately, a shooting star in life and death as he passes away at the age of 7. I know Juddmonte was excited about having him in the Stallion Barn, and now we won't get to see much from Arrogate as the sire, but just a sad circumstance where he passed away at the age of 7. On to brighter news, Matt. Let's talk about last Saturday, because I think last Saturday and even the days surrounding last Saturday, but especially last Saturday, was the most explosive weekend in American racing of the year. And I want to talk about Honor AP first. This is a horse, folks, not to toot our own horn, but I talked Matt into putting into our juvenile showcase. Just a short number of 2-year-olds made our juvenile showcase, and Honor AP was one of them, while still a maiden. So Honor AP is a horse that we've been watching for a long time. I've kind of fallen in love with this gorgeous son of Honor Code and Matt. We both picked him to upset Authentic in the San Anita Derby, and I thought he was absolutely terrific in doing just that.
Yeah, there's no question about it. John Sheriff had him ready to run a big one, and he did just that, handing Authentic the first defeat of his career. I saw some stuff on social media about how Authentic ran a bad race. I didn't think he ran a bad race in there, Brian. I just thought that on this particular day, Honor AP was better.
I'll take out on this particular day. I'll just say that Honor AP is better, Matt. And no, I don't think Authentic ran a bad race at all. Of course, he broke sideways, which probably cost him a little bit of energy and position going into the first turn. But I don't think he was going to beat Honor AP this day. In fact, I saw a look in the eyes of Authentic as Honor AP went by him that kind of told the story of what I expect the future to be for Honor AP, because Honor AP is a bit of a monster. And you said Sheriff's had him ready to run his race in the San Anita Derby, and I agree with that. But on the other hand, it was only his 4th lifetime race. So I am really geeked up and a bit of a fanboy here in wanting to see what Honor AP can do in the future and can become. I think Honor AP in the hands of John Sheriffs is really a good thing. John Sheriffs is one of those trainers where you respect a lot. He's got a little bit of old school in him, but he's also got a little new wave in him too, in the way he treats his horses and the way he knows how his horses are doing, and if his horses are happy or not. He certainly did a masterful job of that with Zenyatta, and it's interesting to see with a horse who's so good early in his career. Again, this San Anita Derby was only his 4th race, what John Sheriffs can do over the long haul, and I really expect Honor AP, despite that great breeding, is a horse we probably will see at 4. But for now, the future looks very bright, and certainly one of the top horses on the Kentucky Derby list, Matt. And if I'm looking at the best horses, 3-year-old horses that have run this year, it's Tis the Law, Honor AP. It's also Nadal, Charlatan, and Maxfield. Unfortunately, the final 3 of those 5, who I call the best 3-year-olds that I've seen this year, are now on the shelf or retired in the case of Nadal, which is a shame. Maxfield's news, it seems like it's been rapid fire. First Nadal, then Charlatan, and then Maxfield yesterday. So tough to be following these horses that we're so excited about for the Kentucky Derby and to see them fall off. But in Tis the Law and Honor AP, I think we have 2 very good ones.
Yeah, no question about it. Who knows what's going to happen going ahead, Brian, in this year of 2020, where unpredictability seems to be the only thing that's predictable.
Yeah. Well, Honor AP with John Sheriffs, Tis the Law with Barkley Tag. We got some really good, experienced horsemen. Hopefully these horses will have a full 3-year-old season and beyond, because they are still 2 real big talents. All right, Matt, Honor AP, yeah, he was the highlight of the weekend for me, but we can just start running down this list. How about Code of Honor? Code of Honor hadn't run since the Breeders' Cup Classic, and I thought Endorsed ran a huge race on a wet track, and Code of Honor was able to run him down.
Certainly, Brian. The wet track was the big question mark. Code of Honor coming back from a long layoff, and Shug is not known for caring to win off long layoffs or even having his horses at their best. But Code of Honor did everything right in there. As you said, Brian, passed a very, very nice horse in Endorsed coming down the stretch to win, by a length or so. So the future looks bright for a horse that a lot of people liked at the end of last year as a 3-year-old in Code of Honor.
Yeah, Code of Honor is a really nice horse, and a lot can be said about Chug McGahee, like I was saying about John Sheriffs too. So Code of Honor, I would expect to have a big year this year. Code of Honor is very exciting because I think he can do it at 1 turn and he can do it at 2. He could do it at a mile and he could do it at a 1.25 miles. The mile will come and play probably in his next start in the Met Mile, which could be a great race coming up in early July. But he could also do it at a 1.25 miles, which would, of course, be the distance of the Breeders' Cup Classic later in the year. Now, speaking about the Met Mile, Matt, we have to start talking about the Met Mile because we saw McKenzie return after a poor performance in the Saudi World Cup to win on Sunday at Santa Anita. But we also saw Vekoma tackle a really tough field in the Grade 1 Carter. It was a wet track, yeah, Matt, but Vekoma ran huge.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was a big field in the Carter. It was a talented field in the Carter. It was an accomplished field in the Carter. And Vekoma was coming back for his second start of the year after winning that 7-furlong race at Gulfstream. And boy, he loved the wet going. He showed his stuff, and he drew off to a big victory, not just in terms of the number of lengths won, but the Spire speed figure came up big with 110. I know, not 120-ish like Arrogate, but a big victory. One of the highest buyer speed figures of the year.
Yeah, it was. And Vekoma, off that performance, might deserve to be favored in the Met Mile over horses like Code of Honor and McKenzie. That's saying a lot. But that's how impressive Vekoma's been. Remember, he won the Bluegrass in his second to last start as a 3-year-old before a tough day in the Kentucky Derby. But we still don't know how good Vekoma is with that strange paddling running style of his. But Carter was huge performance. Having said that, I consider Vekoma a horse who can do 7 furlongs, probably 6 furlongs too, up until 9 furlongs and be a Grade 1 type of horse. But if he does drop down to the sprints, Matt, I don't think he's the best sprinter in the country, nor do I think he's the best sprinter that ran on Saturday. And I don't think he got the best buyer on Saturday. That's because there is a streak of lightning here at Churchill Downs named Volatile. And I tell you what, as good as Matoli was last year for trainer Steve Asmussen, this gray sprinter that he has this year, folks, I'm going to say this, and I'm not kidding, Volatile might be better than Matoli.
He was really, really fast winning that race at Churchill on Saturday. You mentioned the buyer speed figures. His was 1 point higher at 111 than Vekoma in there. I mean, it was not a graded stake. It was not a Grade 1 race. So, big difference there. But, yeah, he flashed some speed in there. And we know that Steve Asmussen and his gang are pretty darn good with these fast horses.
Yeah, well, I think you understated things, Matt. He ran 107 and change and set the track record at Churchill Downs. And it wasn't a case of speed and catch me if you can. It was a case of being right there with fast horses and then just rocketing by them with a turn of foot that you don't see very often. And it was a graded stakes. It wasn't a graded stakes, but it was a graded stakes, if you know what I mean, because the field assembled there for the Aristides was better than a listed stakes. And that's because, of course, places like Belmont and Churchill Downs are just opening up. He didn't beat maybe Grade 1 sprinters in there, but he beat a lot of nice horses, a lot of good sprinters who are graded stakes types of horses. And he did it so easily and so fast that if they keep this horse healthy, he would be maybe my best bet to win any Breeders' Cup race a little bit later this year at this point. That's how good I think Volatile is at 6 furlongs. And Matt, the list goes on. Probable was a strong winner at 10 furlongs of the Hollywood Gold Cup. We mentioned McKenzie the following day coming back at 7 furlongs. But how about the fillies? Fillies like Swiss Skydiver and Newspaper of Record.
Yeah, the big names kept winning. We mentioned last week on our preview show that for Improbable, this was a great chance, considering the field and the size of the field, for him to get a Grade 1 win against older horses going a distance of ground going a classic distance, and I think that's pretty much how it played out. The Fire Speed figure not as brilliant as those others that we mentioned, but a nice performance for Improbable.
Yeah, nice performance for Improbable. It also goes, I think it flattered Tom State Todd a little bit, the 7-year-old who's based here in Kentucky, because I think he still could be the best older horse in the country. And remember how Tom State Todd ran by Improbable the race before. Improbable is a nice horse, and he did what he should do against that field in the Hollywood Gold Cup. Swiss Skydiver, I could say the exact same thing. She's a nice horse, and she did what she should do against that field in the Santa Anita Oaks. 3 nice wins in a row for Swiss Skydiver, coming from Gulfstream Park to Oaklawn Park to Santa Anita. She'll be back at Keeneland next for the Ashland here in July. So an exciting 3-year-old filly who was added, as a late nomination to the Triple Crown. And McPeak is starting to talk Preakness maybe after the Kentucky Oaks. But of course, she'll have the Ashland and the Kentucky Oaks before they can think about the middle jewel for the Triple Crown, which I guess is the last jewel of the Triple Crown this year. And Newspaper Record, it was nice to see, Matt, what she did after a tough year last year. She got 7 furlongs on a turf course that was less than firm. There was a bunch of rain before it, and I think she moves up when it's a little bit wet, but still, it was a really nice performance.
Yeah, so regrettably, we still have that question mark with Newspaper Record. But you're right. Yes, it was a nice comeback, a really good performance. But again, when we look at her PPs before the next race, we're gonna see another victory on a less than firm turf course. So we'll see when she's running again on the firm stuff in the warm weather.
That's right. And things are only going to get tougher, but certainly a big talent. But if you ever see her on wet turf, folks, you know that's what she really loves best. All right, Matt, I think what we're saying here with the end of the show is things are really starting to heat up in American racing, and we're loving it. So let me get a parting shot from you as we close this edition of HorseCenter out.
Yeah, that was well said, Brian. We have been enjoying the racing, and lots more coming up ahead. Other tracks are opening up. Belmont Park coming up. I think I heard this morning Parks is opening finally in very short order. So let's enjoy the racing. And as always, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman, for putting together the show.
Yeah, thanks to Brett, but thanks to all you out there watching us week in and week out. Matt and I sure do appreciate it. Next week, we're going to be back with a big Belmont Stakes and Belmont Stakes undercard. Don't forget how good that undercard is show here on HorseCenter, so you don't want to miss that. I also want to thank our sponsor, the best contest site out there. That's Derby Wars. Folks, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation, I sure hope you do that for us. We appreciate it. And we appreciate you watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week right here on HorseCenter.